Hello, and welcome to another episode from Season 6 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a passion for scary movies. Each week we pick a different horror movie and dissect it to figure out what it was trying to accomplish, how well it did, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season we're changing things up. We're devoting a whole season to reviewing Esquire's list of the 50 scariest movies of all time. In each episode, we'll break down a different movie, talk about how scary it really was, and then update our rankings to prove how much smarter we are than the other people on the internet. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the conversation. On this podcast, we talk a lot about how movies are made and like things that work or don't work and kind of what the director was going for and how well it was accomplished. And I think one thing that we both really like is creativity. And the ways that a movie maker will do the most with what they have. So, like, for us to like a movie, it doesn't have to be this, like, grand production. But if they are able to find a way to take what they have or what is available to them and then make that into something, like, interesting and creative, that's almost, like, more exciting to me.
Yeah.
But I do feel like sometimes a movie maker gets a little pigeonholed by their resources, too. So I think that this director probably set out to make like a hardcore horror movie. But when you've got an actor that exudes as much sex appeal as Jeff Goldblum in the 80s, you can't not make it a romance. Like, you can try to write any scene you want for that man, but when you go to film it, like, his sheer animal magnetism is the only believable thing. Like, it's going to lead to romance. Like, that's the only way that it can be believable. So your options 100%. Are make a ridiculous, non-compelling scene, or you just let things happen. And that's kind of what they had to do here.
Yeah, and the other thing with this is they also knew if they hired any other actress that he wasn't dating, that they would fall in love and probably getting married. So that's why they had to hire someone, Gina Davis, that he was already dating. Yeah. So it wouldn't, cause any ruffles between the relationship.
Right, yeah. Well, and, I can't even blame the Esquire guy for putting this one on the list, because, no, it's not scary, but, yeah, it's 80s Jeff Goldblum. Like, how could you not be entranced? So,
I know.
Yeah. So that's where we are. Yeah. And this wasn't necessarily the scariest horror movie, but it was on the list, and we're still going to talk about it.
Yeah. I got some theories about it.
Excellent. Well, I'll do the introduction, and then we can get to it. The Fly is the 10th episode of the 3rd season of American television drama series Breaking Bad, and the 30th overall episode of the series. Written by Sam Caitlin and Myra Wally Beckett and directed by Ryan Johnson, it aired on AMC in the United States and Canada on May 23, 2010. The Fly has been described as arguably the most polarizing episode in Breaking Bad history, differing from most others in its slow pacing and relatively lack of action. A few critics have considered it to be one of the greatest episodes of the series.
I was just going to let it go. I was just going to let it keep going.
That's as far as I went. Here's the real introduction. In 1986, 20th Century Fox released sci-fi horror film The Fly, which was directed by David Cronenberg. The Fly stars Jeff Goldblum as a sexy scientist who is performing breakthrough research in the field of teleportation. He picks up a reporter at a party and then convinces her to document his progress. He's just so damn sexy that even after he inadvertently melds himself with a fly, she's still super into him and stays around as he starts to lose his grip on reality and mutate into something monstrous. This movie was made on a budget of around $10 million and brought in over $60 million at the box office. It can currently be rented for streaming on Amazon Prime Video.
Exactly.
So there you
go. Yeah, I was actually really looking forward to this. Had you seen it before?
I hadn't. This is one I've seen a billion clips of in like examples of stuff, and I've seen pictures of it. I know it's like a thing that's in pop culture and it has like a strong cult following, but I had never sat down and watched it before. What about you?
Yeah, I've seen it a few times, so it was nice to rewatch it again.
Nice.
It's definitely interesting. We kind of talked about this before, but watching something with the intent of like talking about it is always a little bit difficult for me because I like to kind of zone out within the movie.
Yeah, like going back and watching it in preparation for a podcast is totally different than if you just like stumbled across it.
Yeah. But nevertheless, I got some facts about the movie. Did you know that this was produced by Mel Brooks?
I did not.
Yeah. It was produced by Mel Brooks, and he actually wanted to keep it a secret, which, in my opinion, he did very well. He wanted to keep it a secret because he didn't want people to think this was like one of his, goofy movies.
Yeah.
Or, like a comedy.
This was his first foray into romance, so he didn't want it to like take on, hype of its own beforehand.
Yeah, I think they went to him and they were like, "Hey, do you want to be a producer of this film?" He's like, "What the hell would I want? I do comedies." And he's like, "It has Jeff Goldblum." He's like, "Say no more."
Yeah, I'm in.
Here's $10 million. Yeah, so he was producer, and I think the premiere, when it was finally out, like he decided to kind of, once it was found out that he was a producer, he kind of went against basically like he went in the opposite direction and gave like goofy gifts out to people who were watching it. It didn't make sense to me, but anyway, as I stated before, though, Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis were. Did I say Gina earlier? Anyway, Gina Davis.
I think she goes by Gina.
Yeah, that's what way it's pronounced.
Gina said that.
Yeah. Anyway, so Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis were a couple, like a real life couple before. So they took like a gamble on Jeff.
Yeah.
They knew he's fixing to be the Jeff. You know what I mean?
I'm like, that's the easiest gamble of all time.
Right. And they're like, well, let's just bring in this other, whoever she is. Not really, but yeah. So I won't get into their relationship, but anyway, so the telepods that he uses to teleport, if you look at it not closely, but if you look at it, it looks an awful lot like a motorcycle engine. That's because it was inspired by one.
Interesting.
Yeah. So here's a fact: the baboon in the movie, the one that lived, spoiler, his name was Typhoon.
Nice.
He was also a diva. Everyone hated working with him. He's a real jerk. I guess apparently it's really hard. Let's see. I guess it's really hard to kind of like tame those types of monkeys or something like that. And so like once the lights started flashing in the telepod, he broke the door off. Anyway, so he was very violent. I guess apparently there's no such thing as a tame baboon. That's what it says. So they actually cut out some really crazy scenes.
I was hoping you'd talk about this. Yeah.
Yeah. So about the monkey cat.
Yes. And the baby.
So, I got the monkey cat.
Okay. Go on.
You told me about the baby.
Sorry.
So there's a scene where Jeff combines a monkey and a cat. It kind of goes in to detail about the scene, and then it ends with him killing it very violently. One of the reasons why they decided not to do, to not have it there is because they almost kind of wanted to make you feel sorry for him at the end, and they felt like doing something crazy like that would kind of prevent that.
Yeah. They were, from what I read, they were worried that he would come across as like too violent.
Yeah.
And so then that would make you like care less about him, which was important for like how the movie wanted to make you feel.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So that was the one that I had. What was the one with the baby?
I don't have any information on it at all, other than that there was a version of the movie that had a butterfly baby at the end.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which I'm assuming is what would have come from Gina Davis, but I don't know if that's true.
Gina Davis.
Yes, Gina.
Yeah, so I think I have that here, actually. Let me see. Anyway, so those are the facts that I have for the movie.
Nice. So, in reading about this movie, I always like it, getting ready for those intros, because I typically end up reading a lot more than I really need, and I just get some interesting information sometimes. But on this one, I ended up coming up across a new term that I'd never heard before, which is body horror.
Oh, okay.
I was not aware of that as like a subgenre, and in reading about it, this is just from Wikipedia, body horror or biological horror is a subgenre of horror that intentionally showcases graphic or psychologically disturbing violations of the human body. These violations may manifest through aberrant sex, mutations, mutilation, zombification, gratuitous violence, disease, or unnatural movements of the body. Body horror was a description originally applied to an emerging subgenre of North American horror films, but has roots in early Gothic literature and has expanded to include other media. And then some examples it gave were The Fly, The Blob, and The Human Centipede. So that makes a lot of sense to me. I had always thought of those as like monster or creature horror, but I think that there definitely is like a like I feel like even The Audition would probably fit in that. And in reading about this, I'm like, oh, the guy who made this list is really into body horror, and I'm not, and that's one reason why like I'm so far off from the things that he thinks should be on this list.
Yeah, I think there was like a thing with like within the 80s, and I'm trying to remember specifically. There was, I thought, a name for it where it was like they were doing movies like The Fly. What were the other ones? It was like The Toxic Avenger.
Oh yeah.
Maybe like Night of the Creeps and like Hellraiser. Like, so they were kind of doing that whole like body horror thing, and I think it was specifically with The Fly and Toxic Avenger where they, whatever. Yeah.
But anyway, so that I had never really thought about movies along those lines before, like categorizing that way. Like all of these movies, like The Fly, I had just thought, oh yeah, that's just creature horror, and but thinking of it more in that regard, and like the way that it's trying to be scary is like what's happening to a human body. That kind of makes sense to me. And the fact that that is a definite subgenre of horror, because we've talked several times about how a movie can be gory but not be scary, and I feel like this may be one of those cases where it was gory and it was gross, but I didn't really find it scary. But I think that like body horror is definitely a subgenre of horror that's valid, that some people find extremely disturbing, and so it probably works for other people on that level a lot more than it did for me.
I can definitely understand that, because like I actually have this like fear of like dots close to each other. It's called trypophobia.
Okay.
Don't look it up.
Okay.
Just don't look it up. Anyway, so like it's like my family, like just my siblings, maybe my mom, so we all get it from my mom. Anyway, where it's like it's tied to kind of like a skin thing in a way, like you kind of picture it on skin and shit stuff. It really messes with you. So I can understand this whole body horror thing. For the record, it just creeps you out, like you get super creeped out. And I think it's probably just because we all have like a mental illness. That's my theory on it. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But so, I can definitely understand the whole like seeing the hairs on the back of Jeff Goldblum, like that freaked me out.
On that otherwise perfectly smooth skin.
Yeah.
Man,
can I tell you my favorite thing with that real quick? With his like, so like after he turned into like, or after the teleport with the fly, and he's like doing like all the workouts and stuff right before he does it though, because I've seen it so many times, like he's sitting down and like his upper body and arms look good, but his belly's just kind of sticking out, like kind of pushed out, and I was like, I knew where it was going, where it was like, he was fixing to do some gymnastic stuff. So I was like, this is the greatest thing in the world to see. Like he's supposed to be like in tip top shape, and like his belly's like, that was hilarious. Yeah.
Well, speaking of body horror, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What's worse, 80s hair or emo hair? Because I've spent a lot of time looking up pictures of both this week, trying to come to a firm conclusion, and I just keep going back and forth.
Oh, well, this is how I could answer that. I would have to go with Emu's hair because 80s hair is probably going to come back pretty soon. I mean, mullets are already coming back.
Yeah.
So,
I blame Stranger Things.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. And I just can't see, like, 20, 30 years from now. Maybe. Yeah, I'm going to say emo hair.
Okay. Well, I feel like you can find some pretty extreme examples of both. So if you just need to Google and cheer yourself up and like feel better about yourself for a while, just Google image search emo hair and then Google image search 80s hair. And yeah.
Well, and also it was like we grew up with the emo hair. Like we only saw family pictures that we were in of the 80s hair. So,
but we also grew up in Oklahoma. So I have lots of very clear memories of people in the 90s that still had 80s hair.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but our group, we at least saw it. I'll get down to My Chemical Romance any day of the week. Take It Back Sunday, put it on.
Yep.
I'll sing it out.
Yep.
Just won't do the hair.
I feel like this movie was practical effects at its finest.
Did you know that this movie was a remake?
I did, yeah. Okay,
so I haven't seen The Fly, but I was wondering what their practical effects were like.
Oh, in the original?
Yeah. I was wondering because I feel like it. Some of the acting. So one of the things I read about Gina Davis was that she had to be coached to not act or like not have the same like not talk like or have the same voice as Jeff Goldblum. You know, he kind of has this choppy kind of way of talking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it was kind of the same with her, and that she kind of had to be coached. But there were a couple scenes where I was just like, I felt like it was a 50s, like the overreaction of like screaming, like like Gina screaming and stuff. But anyway, yeah, I feel like as far as the special effects go with the makeup, I was actually really impressed with it.
Yeah, I can't imagine how much time they must have spent on makeup in this movie.
So there was like they said there's 7 steps for it, like from his very beginning to the very end. There were 7 steps. Yeah,
like 7 different levels of flyness.
Yeah, and it's crazy because it was just like it just started with like some blemishes on the face and the hair on the back, and then it like next thing you know he's just like covered.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I thought it was like super convincing and accomplished exactly the effect they were going for. Like with that much makeup, it's a little bit risky because you can make it look really ridiculous really fast. But the way that he was playing the role and the way that they did those like makeup effects, I thought it was just perfect for the movie.
Yeah.
But even, I mean, beyond just him, like when he first tries to teleport that monkey and then it's like all of its insides but none of its skin or its inside out or whatever, that was super gross. But it was also the first like really gruesome practical effects of the movie, and I was like, okay, well, we're about to go for a ride. Yeah,
it was and then you felt bad for the little monkey.
Well, but like, what was the baboon budget for his research, and why didn't he start with mice?
Are you just trying to get Typhoon out of work?
I'm just saying, like, I feel like a baboon would be an expensive mistake. So let's get your problems out of the way on like mice that are a dime a dozen, right? And then switch to the baboons. But
maybe it's because they're the closest to humans.
Well, anyway,
baboons,
baby steps.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway. Yeah.
All that said, I think Jeff Goldblum did really a pretty awesome job with his role.
Yeah, I think. I mean, so here's the thing: when it comes down to this movie. Is it a scary movie? For me, not at all. Is it a scary movie that I could have seen them in the 50s have? For sure, because they're a bunch of freaking weirdos back then. Anyway, but even though it's not a scary movie, it still had some horror aspects. But
sure,
I still thought it was a good movie. Like I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
like there wasn't any like. Now I will say this because we have podcast magic where we record a couple podcasts at a time. We're trying to make it through December, right? And so and we were in a band, so I know this. And I started out with one that I thought was going to be rougher, Maniac, and then went to The Fly.
Uh-huh.
And so, anything after the Maniac, the acting's better. So I was like, oh, this is, I was in heaven. So.
Well, it's talking about acting. I really like the way that Jeff Goldblum was very like expressive with his eyes in the first part of the movie. Mm-hmm. And then as they were adding more makeup, he kept being able to do like less and less with his actual face, but he was still able to be like super expressive with his eyes. Mm-hmm. So the fact that he kept that going kind of through the whole movie and was able to be to convey emotion and stuff with that, I thought was just kind of a real pro move on Jeff's part.
Yeah.
He's not just a pretty face. And he was also super convincingly creepy with all his rants. Like as the movie goes on and he's getting crazier and crazier and talking about becoming the first insect politician and merging himself with other people, you're like, this dude is off his rocker, and it's real creepy and uncomfortable to see.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, and there were just things that, like you were saying, like, I mean, I like the idea of like him adding a whole bunch of sugar to the coffee. That's where you kind of know, like, okay, this is obviously, like, that's a Fly thing, so you know that the turnout's coming, or that, that something bad's coming, but just the way that they gradually turned him into a Fly, like to where the end he literally turned in straight up into a Fly. It wasn't like any sign of human. The Fly came out of him. And I don't know, like I just thought that was really interesting. I thought, you gotta give it up to Gina Davis for sticking with a man like that.
Yeah, well, but if you could remember what he looked like through all of that, I mean, you would have no problem. I mean, you couldn't keep yourself away.
That's true. There's still hope.
Yeah.
Like the dream sequence she had where the larvae come out and it's like
Fly baby.
That's I could definitely see that whole horror aspect come out.
Yeah.
It made me really want to watch the original Fly, just to see if they touched on some of that stuff. Also, like, if anyone listening is like, they keep talking about how Jeff Goldblum looks so good. He looks so good that he broke a guy's arm in an arm wrestling competition and like got the girl home.
Yeah. He picked up a chick in a bar,
right?
By arm wrestling.
After breaking a guy's arm, not just like, oh, my arm hurts. He broke the skin.
Mm-hmm.
12 months rehab, probably.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah.
That guy will never play piano again.
Broke his dreams. Funny as fuck.
But there were a few things about how this movie was made that were not quite so good.
You bite your tongue, Daniel.
For example, some of the writing. My favorite bit of dialogue was with Gina and her boss. And she goes home and he's there and she's like, how'd you get in here? And he said, I have a key. You gave it to me. And she says, I knew I should have changed the locks.
Was it because you're lazy or what was it? She said something about being lazy.
Yeah, but it's like, how'd you get in here? I have a key that you gave me. Oh, yeah.
Foiled again.
Exactly. Necessary talking.
Yep.
Insert dialogue here. But, yeah. But then beyond that, I felt like, to me, in a lot of places, it felt like a made-for-TV movie. Like, I swear there were some parts that were meant to be commercial breaks.
Well, the way, and I agree with that. Like, the way that her boss and Gina was acting, like, when he was in her apartment was exactly like the sexual harassment videos we have to watch at work.
That's so true.
Every year. I mean, it was like, that was it. It was just like, oh, this 100%, is obvious. Like, like quid quo pro, is that what they call it? Where it's like, oh, okay. Like, I have to take it, like, we have to take it every January and take a test on it. And it's just like, that's exactly what the acting was in that situation. It was also kind of crazy that there weren't, like, it was one of those movies where there wasn't like any, wasn't too many like extras.
That's true.
Like, main focus was on basically 3 characters.
Yeah.
But yeah, the acting was definitely a little intense at times. And like I said, I was wondering if it was tied, if they were trying to make it like a 50s acting, like the whole like the girl about to faint, so she sticks like the back of her hand up to her forehead, and goes,
Yeah.
oh, you know, kind of thing. But
yeah, I felt like, so this movie was kind of like a lot of the ones we've watched recently from the list, where it was kind of just like a lot of build up and talking, but then there was one kind of final really intense sequence. And so at the end, when Jeff has gone like full fly and is like busting out of his skin, and or I guess sorry, right before that, where he's wrestling with the editor and he like is vomiting on his hand and watches it melt, and then is like on his leg too while he's there with the shotgun, and then that final transformation where his skin starts coming off, like that was nightmare fuel. That was really intense, like good horror, I thought, for that, you know, just small little 10-minute stretch there at the end. But so much of the movie leading up to that point didn't feel that way at all. It felt much more like Beauty and the Beast or something.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. It wasn't until the very end for me that that was the case. Yeah. But I mean, I battled flies this summer when our AC went out, and if I had watched this movie closer to that time, I probably would have been a lot more harsh on them. But I was just wondering why they didn't get just like a salt gun and take Jeff Goldblum.
Right? Yeah.
That's what I did with all my dang flies.
The bug assault.
You.
Yeah, exactly. I hooked you up, bro.
Yeah. I got missing paint on my walls from a salt gun that you shoot at flies.
They had it coming.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if your house was infested with baboons?
Typhoons running around?
Shoot.
God dang. I think if it didn't have... So I think with this movie, if it didn't have that ending, I don't know if it would have been as good as it was. Like, I definitely enjoyed it. It was definitely like I would almost even say the ending started when she was getting an abortion and he goes out of... Because if he was just staying in his, his home the whole time, then it wouldn't be too scary to other people of like, what if he gets out and goes crazy? But... busting through the hospital, picking her up and taking her back and all that just kind of made it hit home, or, in a way. But.
Yeah, I feel like I could have probably cut out about the middle third of the movie and been just fine. But obviously you can't not watch the beginning part because Jeff Goldblum is just so damn sexy. And then the end part is like actually good horror, the last little bit. So,
yeah. There's also a thing with this movie that's interesting to me, which is like, they say that there's like 4 types of film, basically, where like you have like the westerns where the cowboy is the police officer.
Yep.
You have like the northerns where the cops are like corrupt. You have like a south where like, or maybe like the Midwest where the cops are like there to help, and then you have like, I think it's like east like coast, or like the not northeast but the east coast where like police are just not present at all. And I think that this was kind of one of those situations too, where
no
it's
cops.
like none. Call it dang cops when the hospital gets busted in and a lady gets stolen, kind of thing. And instead, maybe this could have technically been under the western because of her boss getting a gun, and I don't know. But anyway, just something interesting to think about.
So,
just call the cops.
Also, there are 4 kinds of businesses: tourism, food service, railroads, and sales. And hospital/manufacturing, and air travel.
Profit. You just said 6, man.
That was a direct Michael Scott quote.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, Donnie, if you listen to this...
Oh, no.
Please tell us the correct amount of how many businesses there are.
Types of business.
No. Businesses.
Sorry. So yeah, we made it through The Fly.
Good one.
Yeah. The classic. And really, I do think the strength of this film was Jeff Goldblum's performance. I thought he did an awesome job with what could have been a very boring role otherwise.
Yeah.
But he made it something more than that, which is awesome. And
I think this is like I enjoyed this movie a lot, and I'll watch it again, but it wouldn't end up on my 50 scariest movies.
Oh, no, not at all.
Yeah.
But I would be curious to hear if there are people out there who are like body horror fans that see this as like canon. It's like, oh no, this is the one. This is the one that all the others came from.
Yeah, that's true.
Next week we will be back with Maniac from 1980.
Maniac.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening. Can we pause for 2 seconds?
Yeah.
I have snot dripping into my mustache, and it's the worst feeling in the world. I will be right back. I'm so sorry.
I don't remember where I looked at it. I think it was, I think Clarence James was actually on there, and then I felt bad because I was like, he posted how many listens he got, for the year and thing. And I was like, oh shit, those were all mine. Like, that's my bad, dude.
Giving him this false sense of success.
But my number one podcast that I listened to was son of
What is that?